Hey, welcome to Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts. In this two-part series, we sit down and talk with Captain Lee Majors from the Leon County Sheriff's Office. The Leon County Sheriff's Office has operated helicopters in support of law enforcement and public safety efforts in Tallahassee, Leon County, and the surrounding area since 1974. For the first 25 or so years, Leon County Sheriff's Office operated the only law enforcement helicopter in the panhandle. Today, the Leon County Sheriff's Office Aviation Bureau is often modeled by other agencies and is the primary Florida Regional Domestic Security Task Force aviation response unit for the region. Captain Lee Majors is a lifelong resident of Tallahassee, Florida, with a rich history of service in law enforcement aviation and community involvement. His journey with the Leon County Sheriff's Office began as a volunteer in 1985 when he joined the Leon County Sheriff's Office C.B. Posse, steadily rising through the ranks to the position of lieutenant. In 1989, while still serving in the Posse, he volunteered at aviation as a reserve tactical flight officer. Showcasing his dedication to public safety aviation, in January of 2000, his commitment was recognized when he was hired as a full-time employee in the aviation unit. Over the years, Captain Majors has played pivotal roles within the Leon County Sheriff's Office, including being promoted to sergeant in 2014 and assuming command of the aviation unit. Throughout his tenure, Captain Majors has spearheaded numerous initiatives and achievements within the Leon County Sheriff's Office. He was instrumental in procuring and outfitting the new Bell 505 helicopter, making it the first new aircraft purchased for the unit since its inception in 1974. Additionally, he played a key role in establishing the Leon County Sheriff's Office Tallahassee PD Aviation Task Force, expanding the reach and effectiveness of airborne law enforcement operations in the Tallahassee, Leon County area and beyond. Captain Majors' expertise extends beyond the Leon County Sheriff's Office, as he is recognized as a subject matter expert in airborne law enforcement operations nationally. He has lent his technical and safety guidance to numerous agencies, assisting them with aviation unit startups and equipment procurement. Captain Majors is a pilot with over 5,600 hours of logged PIC time. He holds FAA certificates as an airline transportation pilot, flight instructor for helicopters and single-engine land and sea airplanes. He's an instrument flight instructor and advanced ground school instructor, among others. Outside of his professional endeavors, Captain Majors is actively involved in various organizations and community initiatives. He serves on the board of directors for the Airborne Public Safety Association, where he currently holds the position of treasurer. He also volunteers with organizations such as the Experimental Aircraft Association, Lively Technical College Airframe and Power Plant School Occupational Advisory Council, and the Boy Scouts of America. Captain Lee Majors' dedication to aviation safety, law enforcement, and community service has made a lasting impact on the public safety aviation community worldwide. Thank you to our sponsors, Becker Avionics, Shotover, and Bell.
Welcome to the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts. The Hangar Z podcast is the first and only podcast dedicated to promoting and exploring the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation. Join your host, John Gray, Jeff Ratkovich, and Jack Shanley.
Still southbound, skidding to a stop. Down by here. Looks like they're getting ready to bail. Heads up, guys, bailing. Okay, the guy, he's running through the house, jumping the fence, through the shotgun, through something out. Grabbing the shotgun. Don't go over that fence. Don't go over that fence. Grab the shotgun again. He is armed. Stay there. Hold your position.
4 on the stop. You're in custody.
Good advising code 4 on the stop.
Hey, welcome to Hangar Z podcast. I'm your host, John Gray. Got an outstanding lineup of conversation in store for today. We got Jack Shanley, our famous host and co-host. How you doing, Jack?
Very good, John.
Are you fresh from your autograph signing session?
Yeah, I got that all out of the way, John. Thank you.
Your hands all cramped up?
Yeah, but I'll be all right. I'll hang in there.
Always happy to have you, Jack. It's been
Thanks,
a lot of fun, and these conversations only get better when you're around. So I appreciate you hanging out. And we've got Captain Lee Majors with us. How you doing, sir?
I'm good. And you gentlemen this afternoon, how are you?
Yeah, we're doing really good, and really happy to have you with us.
Glad to be here.
You know, we're part of MHM Publishing, and Vertical was just out covering you guys. You got to work with Lloyd, I believe, and some amazing content came out of that. So we wanted to follow that up and pick your brain and hear about your program. So excited to have you join us. Sure. On top of your program, you're also the secretary or the treasurer for APSA. Everybody in our audience, for the most part, is intimately familiar with APSA. So it'll be nice to talk to you about what's going on at APSA and some of the upcoming events like AppsCon. It's crucially important to our industry. So thank you for what you're doing at APSA and for what APSA is doing for the industry.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
So with every episode of the Hangar Z podcast, or just about every episode, we get a drink of the day. It's a little early for me to be enjoying the adult beverages, so I'm still in the caffeinating process. I've got my Hangar Z podcast leadership mug, which I think Jack has one of as well.
I do.
And I've just got some Black Rifle coffee in there. So that's my beverage for today. And I'm sure at some point later this evening, it'll be a frosty cold beverage of some sort. But for now, that's what I got. Lee, what do you got?
Well, interestingly enough, I'm drinking Black Rifle too. I've got the gunship version going right now because I am in the middle of my day at work. And then as the backup, I've got my always have it with me, my water bottle with my element in there to keep the hydration where we need it.
We'll have to get you a Hangar Z sticker for that water bottle.
Yeah.
There we go.
Jack, what do you got going?
I'm doing the liquid death this morning of severed lime.
Okay.
Severed lime. It's iced tea, and it's really good.
Very cool.
Nice.
Now,
Nice.
Lee, if it was 5 o'clock and we were doing this podcast in the afternoon, like we maybe discussed, we probably should have to have a proper beverage. What would your proper beverage be?
Well, I like a craft beer, whatever that may be. We've got several good breweries here in Tallahassee, and I do enjoy that from time to time.
Well, you're sitting in the company of fellow beer drinkers, so cheers to that. Jack happens to be in the beer mecca of Oregon. And,
Yeah. There's too many breweries. You can't get to them all.
Yeah. I'm striking distance to San Diego. San Diego is, if you haven't been to their beer scene down there, you've got to check it out. It's the epicenter. It's absolutely amazing.
I have not, and I'm kind of partial to this side of the country. You can have California.
I don't blame you. I definitely don't blame you. It does feel bad to be behind enemy lines at times. So I have to get you guys in here to rescue me at some point. But yeah, I appreciate you guys drink the day. And so we'll cheers to y'all.
Cheers, everybody.
The next segment we'd like to get into is we call the hot seat. It's just an opportunity for us to break the ice and go through some random questions. And I found some pretty random questions for this one. So
we'll see if I can come up with some random answers.
I've kind of been stuck on the would you rather type, or also the this or that type question. So this is a would you rather type question. I don't know if you're an outdoors person or not, but I'd imagine you are, being where you are. But the question is, would you rather spend a week in the woods without a tent or a night in a real haunted house?
Interesting. I think I would spend the week in the woods. Yeah. Like you say, being outdoors is good. If I can take my go bag with me, I think we'd be fine with that. Yeah.
That's a good answer.
When I put this question in, I was thinking back to our time in Savannah at APSCON, and we did the cemetery tours out there. And I'll tell you what, that was a little spooky. So I don't like that kind of stuff. I'm not about the supernatural. So
Exactly.
I'm with you. I think I'm gonna hang out in the woods without a tent. Jack, what would you do?
I'm in the woods without a tent, for sure. I've done the Savannah ghost tour as well, long time ago with the family, and I'll take the woods without a tent.
Well, you kind of did that anyways on your bike tour, right?
Well, I had a tent. I wished it would have been a fortress, actually, with an electrified fence around it that made me sleep better in grizzly country. But yeah, we did some roughing it on that bike trip a couple summers ago.
Yeah. So did you start in Oregon, and how far east did you go?
No, it started in near the Canadian border in Montana, and then went down through Montana, through near Yellowstone into Idaho and Wyoming, and we ended up in Jackson.
That's right.
Yeah. So it was all grizzly country the whole time.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're in bear country the whole time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And you could.
So was this bicycle?
It was on a bicycle.
Interesting. At the gym the other day, we had some guests in that were from France, and they had flown into Miami and were riding their bikes to Seattle.
Wow. The cross-country riding is a hot ticket. There's a lot of people doing it.
I don't know if this is the time of year to be trying to do that.
Well, by the time they get to the places that are questionable, it'll be a while, so it'll warm up by then, hopefully.
Well, the next question has to do with, I guess, life's annoyances. Would you rather have hiccups forever or always feel as though you're about to sneeze?
Ooh, that's kind of kind of the same thing. I would say feel like I'm going to sneeze because I think I could do something about that. The hiccups just kind of happen. So yeah, you might be able to mask that a little bit better than a hiccup.
Man, I hate both of those. I don't know which one I hate more. I feel like when I'm about to sneeze and it just won't come, it's the worst 10, 15 seconds of the day. But so is hiccups. So I don't know that I have an answer for that. I think I'll have to defer to Jack.
Wow. I think I'd rather have the I'm about to sneeze feeling. Hiccups would drive me crazy. Where do you get these questions? Do you stay up late at night and just go, hiccups or sneezing? That's very good, John.
Well, you go to bed and you're like, I'm going to go to bed early tonight. Then you just sit there thinking about the world's most random stuff.
Including hot seat questions.
Okay, for the last one, would you rather ruin the surprise for a surprise party, or would you rather show up in a costume to a black tie event?
Haven't shown up to parties wearing things that somebody told me to wear and wasn't what the dress was. I would say I would be okay with that one instead of ruining somebody else's day. That would just affect me.
I think of Dumb and Dumber when they walk into that black tie event wearing those tuxedos. They're sword fighting as they walk through the door. It's so good.
Hey, those tuxedos are not far from what I wore to the prom in 1977 or 78. Just so you know. And I have photographic evidence.
I think
yes, we all do.
You might want to hide those photos.
Oh no, they're out there. Believe me.
That's awesome. Yeah, I don't think I want to surprise. I don't want to ruin anybody's surprise party. I think that's like, bad juju. So I'll stay away from doing that.
I agree.
But yeah, showing up to a costume or a black tie event in a costume could be interesting. It could be fun. So I think I'd go with that. Anyhow, that's our random hot seat questions for today. Thanks for
survived, Lee. Very good. Good job.
I did. You didn't kick me off yet, so I guess we're good.
Well, Lee, like I said, thank you for joining us. Really excited to get into your background, reading through your bio and your resume you sent over and all the things that I've read about you. Really impressive what you've done, not only for yourself professionally, but how you've built your aviation program and what you've done for the industry through APSA. So thank you for that. Prior to get into kind of your professional history, can you give us a little bit of background where you grew up and how you got into law enforcement aviation?
I've been right here in North Florida my entire life. Born in Panama City, moved here when I was 5 years old, like a lot of people that move around because Dad job changed and had to move. So still had a lot of ties in Panama City, but been here in Tallahassee since I was 5 years old. Went to school here, grew up here. I've seen a lot of change, even just with our agency. I'm probably one of the oldest people left here. It's been here the longest and seen a lot change. How did I get involved here? Well, back in 1985, I joined the sheriff's office as a volunteer, and back then the unit that I went into, the primary function was to monitor the C.B. radio for emergency traffic and go direct traffic at events and work the parades and that type of thing. So that's how I got started here. Then it didn't take long. I'd always had an interest in aviation. I still remember this day as a young kid asking my parents for a helicopter, and they bought me a toy for Christmas, and they didn't understand that wasn't what I had in mind at all. They didn't quite pick up on that. But so I got introduced to the guys out here at aviation and started coming out and hanging out. After a few years of that, my assignment basically was changed to a volunteer in the aviation unit. I was volunteer flight officer at that time for a number of years. During that time, went and got my fixed wing ratings and saw an opportunity. It's back when you could still do some primary training in an OH-58 before they changed all of those rules. We, at the time, had a bunch of those. I proposed to the sheriff that we had instructors on staff and aircraft here, and it would just cost some fuel to transition me into that, and I could take care of the weekends and after hours and help out and whatnot, and they bought off on it. So that's how my journey into law enforcement aviation started.
Going back to your early days prior to even being an adult and having the opportunity to volunteer, was there somebody in your life that kind of influenced you to want to pursue or get involved in law enforcement in the capacity that you did?
Not really. Nobody in the family's been in law enforcement. Nobody in the family's been a pilot. It was just one of those things, you know. I guess that seemed interesting, and the direction that I took.
What was your kind of regular job back then when you were, moonlighting as a volunteer, but also having to work a 40-hour-a-week regular job?
Until I actually came to work here full time, I had been self-employed or worked in family business my entire life. So, first career, if you will, was in electronic security, access control, that type of thing. When we sold that company, I went along with it with one of the big, huge companies for a year. When I left that, I already had another company started doing industrial sound communication, music, that type of thing, and worked that for a number of years. And the opportunity came to sell that, and just timing worked out great that the position was open here when our previous captain, Jim Bragdon, had retired, and was able to step right in here and was already doing the job. I was already a TFO here, so really just got a paycheck and a desk and started doing the job. I have been super fortunate to be in the right place at the right time and know the right people several times in my life.
Well, you talk about your involvement with the youth. You're heavily involved in youth development programs, and one of them that you're involved with is the Young Eagles. Did they have any influence on you as a child? Was that program something that influenced you to be interested in aviation at all?
Apparently nowhere in my stuff did I tell you how old I was, because that program was nowhere around when I was a child. So no, I remember the first airplane ride that I took, which may have had some influence on me. But no, as a child, I wasn't involved in that. I'm very fortunate that I was involved in that program as an adult and was able to give some of that back, to some children, and maybe made a difference in some of their lives. In fact, I know I did in some of those.
We talk about the recruitment retention issues surrounding our industry right now, and I always like to touch on how these youth development programs are so beneficial, not just for the kids, but for the industries we work in. The Explore programs and all these programs that operate around the police department, the sheriff's departments are huge. You guys have some youth development type programs with your agency?
We do, and our sheriff is big about community involvement and those type of programs. And absolutely, anything we can do to make a positive impact on a young person, even if it's just to keep them out of trouble, maybe. But the earlier that we can get to them and have that positive impact, it may be somebody that wants to come to work for us. Absolutely.
Jack, I forget, did you have any involvement as a youth in any of the Explore type programs?
Thank you to our sponsor, Becker Avionics. Becker Avionics, new 3D spatial audio will mitigate possible confusion in the cockpit by repeating the last 90 seconds of incoming messages broadcast over any two channels. Check out the new AMU 6500 at www.beckerusa.com.
No, not really. But I did a similar thing that Lee just mentioned with my hometown police department, where I was a volunteer in this very, very small department for parades, for traffic, just a little bit. And that but it was enough to give you a taste, and make you feel like you're involved, and you get to kind of see the inside of the job, and it helps guide you. And if you like it as a volunteer, you're going to love it when they pay you, So that's how I looked at it. So it wasn't much as a youth. It was more as, once I was out of high school and in college, where I was doing some of that with the PD. And it was a small department in my hometown of 5,000 people. So I knew all those guys, and they all influenced me, in different ways. Not in an organized program.
Yeah.
And I very much they had to hold my paperwork until my 18th birthday so they could process it. I had to be an adult to join. So yeah, I've been at this agency since my entire adult life.
Yeah, that's cool. Clay Lacey talks about, he calls it the itch to serve, and how most of us in public safety, whether it's fire, EMS, or law enforcement, or the military, have this itch to serve and do something bigger than yourselves. And that's evident in both of you guys, doing this from a young age and working your whole career. To do something that's bigger than yourself and to build something that's bigger than yourself is really cool. So I really like to talk about that. The other thing I'd like to talk about is the pathway that people take to get to the positions they're in, because there's so many different ways to get there. And while some people, their stories might be similar, they're different. And I think it's encouraging for folks when they look at their own situation, be like, well, there's not one particular way to get there. There's a bunch of different paths to the end result. And so, yeah, I like to kind of profile that and go through that. For your own agency, can you kind of give us a profile of what your agency looks like, number of personnel, how big your area of responsibility is, and kind of just an overall snapshot?
We're not a big city. I got the numbers pulled up right here. So our agency is 750 members. 300 of those are sworn. I'll speak to the only municipality that's inside our county. Also, the Tallahassee Police Department, 580 members. 450 of those are sworn. So we're getting up into that medium-sized agency. Certainly, we've moved out of being a small agency like all the counties around us and whatnot, but certainly not a big one. Like with any full service agency, anything you can think of doing, we've got. If you want to be on the road your whole career, that's fine. Or if you want to go into investigations, that's fine. If you want to work, in the judicial or in corrections, all of the specialty teams from SWAT, dive, hostage, aviation, all of these things we have. We're a full service agency.
Are you seeing the population in your county has grown? I'm sure dramatically since the last 30 years. But are you seeing a lot of California law enforcement officers try and lateral either to your county or other counties in Florida?
I don't get involved much in the recruitment. There's another thing you can do, recruiters. We have full-time recruiters now that go and talk to people. I'm sure they are. We're not one of the big draw cities. We're not a tourist mecca or whatnot. So a lot of those people are moving to South Florida. We're up here in North Florida. We're really kind of South Georgia, if you will. So I'm sure we're getting them. I'm sure we are. The governor here has incentivized that. If you move from somewhere else here in law enforcement, you get a bonus right off the bat from the state to come do that. So with that and all the other advantages that we have here in Florida over some of the other states, yeah, I'm quite sure we're seeing that.
Your governor is one of my heroes, by the way. He's an amazing guy. And I don't say that about many politicians.
A lot of people say that. Yes.
Jack, have you spent time in that part of Florida, training or otherwise?
Escambia. I've been to Escambia, which is further west of where Lee is, but I've driven through Tallahassee I've done some stuff in Gulf Shores, Alabama for Chief Ed Delmore and Jason Woodruff, and I've been there many times teaching, and then I've been to Dothan, Alabama, just up the road from Tallahassee, but not right in Tallahassee, not in Leon County.
A lot of people have driven through here because if you're going from northwest to here and you're going to South Florida, you probably get on the interstate and drive through.
The last time that I went through there, I was on my way leaving Gulf Shores and going to Myrtle Beach to my dad, and I was on the phone with a buddy from Gulf Shores a lot because I was exhausted. And I was driving on the 10 freeway, and it's dark and straight and boring between cities there. And Jason was keeping me awake on the phone, something that I really appreciated. John's done that for me too in the past.
Yeah. A lot of driving for you between the academy and home.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And it is dark up here. A lot of this, it's rural. So yeah, it's between Pensacola and Jacksonville, you've got Tallahassee, and that's pretty much it.
It was like the only time that it lit up in the whole drive. It was a nice change when I was driving.
You kind of answered part of what I was going to ask regarding your county. You talked about it being rural. What would you say? Is it more of a rural type county, or is there a lot of urban sprawl in there as well?
Well, yeah, really both. So the county is 702 square miles, so it's a pretty decent sized county. With inside that, the city of Tallahassee, again, our only municipality, is 63 square miles, but obviously that's where most of the work gets done. Yes, very rural. Big chunk of the county is covered in national forest. That type of undeveloped land. Here in North Florida, we still have a lot of timber land around. The counties around us are relatively undeveloped, but the city itself is growing, and we're getting that sprawl. And it's every day you drive past somewhere that used to be a pasture, and now it's a housing development. So we're seeing that. It's amazing from the air. People don't realize how spread out the city has gotten as it's grown. And I live way out in the county, and almost in the next county, and the city limit is like a mile from me now. So yeah, it's sprawling like it is everywhere else.
Yeah, believe it or not, even in Southern California, you're continuing to see that development of land. Any unoccupied land is open for development, it seems, in California now, and there's not much left. You talk about your flights, and you find one open little patch of ground, and then a week later, it seems there's a sign in the ground that's going to be developed for a warehouse or something of the sort. So it's happening.
What's amazing, flying over Florida, if you fly cross country a lot, we think that the whole state is developed and there's people everywhere, but most of Florida is still rural. Down the coastlines in the down south is where everything is, but we've still got lots of land that's undeveloped, that's farmland or pasture land, that type of thing. But yeah, it's sprawling out that way. You can certainly see it.
California, I think it's extra challenging because while they're literally carving into the hillsides now to build homes, they're finding the extra places to build homes, but they're not finding extra real estate for the freeways and the byways to support that. So traffic is notoriously bad in California. It's only getting worse, unfortunately.
It's not just the traffic, but that's okay. Move to Florida.
I don't disagree with you there, sir.
Yeah, the 10 freeway in LA and the 10 freeway in Tallahassee, different stories as far as volume of cars. it's the same
different
freeway,
end of the spectrum.
but
yeah, Jack, you've been able to escape the traffic in Oregon. How's your situation changed from the LA basin up to where you're at now?
Oh, when we first moved here 7 years ago, we joked about it all the time, saying how we would make fun of people that would say, "Oh, the traffic here in Bend," and we just laugh. But now Bend has grown out of control, and now there is traffic in Bend. It's not the same grind traffic of LA or Washington D.C. or New York, but it's just kind of an annoyance. John and I have talked about this before, Lee, that we don't want to know how many hours we spent commuting in our careers, because I lived 45 miles from work. And John, what was your mileage?
It was about the same. It was 49 miles each way. So,
and John had a mountain to come down and go up, but 45 miles, and that wasn't unusual for officers to live that far out of their where they worked. But when you look at how many hours you spent on the freeway over a career, I don't want to know the number. It would depress me, that I spent that much time sitting in a car.
Or the amount of money you spent in fuel going back and forth.
Unbelievable. Some of that was canine car time, so that was good.
Yeah, you can't beat that. Well, getting back to you guys in your operations in your county, can you talk about, you kind of briefly mentioned some of the assignments that are possible, but can you talk about some of them? I know patrol obviously is a backbone of most of the agencies. Can you talk about the patrol operations, what they support? I know you've got Tallahassee and they've got their own police department, but can you just kind of broadly touch on what you guys are supporting there?
Full service, and don't discount the fact that the city is still inside the county. So we have people that work inside the city as well as out in the county. But yeah, that force is growing too. Those guys on the road, the sheriff is overhiring positions now, so we can increase those number of people because everybody is short staffed trying to do that. The cooperation between the agencies on the road is awesome. The way our calls are dispatched, we're all on the same radio channels, so it's whoever's the closest one goes, and then you sort out whose call it is. That was a big thing that came down some number of years ago to make it more rapid response from whoever's the closest one to offer the first aid or whatever the case may be. So yeah, it's a good place to be, and I encourage anybody that's looking for a good place that the pay is starting to try to keep up with demand and recruitment and retention. We're certainly trying to do that. The sheriff's done a great job with that.
Are there small municipalities within Leon County outside of the city limits of Tallahassee that have their own police departments, or is that all Leon County Sheriff's Office?
So yes, there's the city of Tallahassee is the only municipality inside the county. So if it's not inside the city, it belongs to the sheriff's office.
That's
So you have a lot of ground to cover as far as your ground forces go. You talked about recruitment a little bit. Are you guys being able to keep pace with retirements and whatnot when it comes to filling the spots in your agency?
Well, we're like everybody else. We're trying, between the retirement and it seems like people don't stick around like they used to anymore. So you just have that natural attrition. But a change, like I said, from years past is that the sheriff has seen this and staff's trying to get ahead of this, and they're overhiring positions now because they know we're going to have that attrition. So we keep classes of new recruits in the pipeline all the time now, where it used to be you did that once a year, maybe twice a year, but we keep a class coming through now. So they're doing their best to keep up.
That's cool. Well, I'd like to start kind of digging into your aviation program, and you talk about starting there as a volunteer and then transitioning into a full-time employee. Can you talk about what that transition was like for you, and then we'll get into kind of what the makeup of your program is?
Well, for me, that was kind of easy because I was already here doing the job. So, like I said, I got a paycheck and a desk and started coming here to work instead of going somewhere else. So that was easy for me. That's not the path that most people get to take. But again, I have right place, right time, right people. Luck plays a lot sometimes in life, and I was pretty lucky in that regard.
Yeah, the timing is huge. A lot of folks they're on the opposite side of that. They don't have the luxury of being in the right place at the right time. So you take it when you can get it. That's really cool. Going into your program, can you talk about what the program was like, how it was structured when you first started as a volunteer, and then kind of how it grew from there?
Thank you to our sponsor, Shotover. Shotover Systems is the leading developer and manufacturer of high-performance gyro-stabilized cameras with advanced real-time AR mapping and mission management, all backed by unparalleled custom training and support. Now offering the M2 multi-sensor system, sole 6-axis EO/IR platform with 4K Ultra HD color and infrared technology. Ideal for law enforcement and defense. Offered with real-time AR overlays to quickly identify streets, weather, and traffic. Automated license plate recognition, 24 megapixel digital photographs, and automated steering and tracking.
So when I first started here, you had two pilots and a mechanic, and that was it. And in fact, one of those pilots was still in the Guard, so he may not even be here in town, so they may not even have anybody to respond if they had to. And fast forward a bunch of years now, the program continues to grow. Now there's 8 full-time pilots. I've got one reserve pilot, which is a retired unit commander, not from here, from another agency. I've got another reserve pilot that's in the pipeline now, full-time maintenance manager, another full-time maintenance technician. We've got other ones that we use as contractors. We have a big maintenance event coming, and that's continuing to grow. Our strategic plan has us adding three more pilot positions, hopefully soon, and then we will be a 24-hour operation. So we've gone from being a fly when you can to being on call to being hopefully 24 hours in the next year.
So all of your pilots are also acting sometimes as tactical flight officers. Is that correct?
So I'm very fortunate that right now everybody is a pilot, everybody is a TFO, and I'm glad you brought that up. That's just how I wanted it structured, and I've been lucky to be able to do that. I'm sure that won't be the case all the time, but what that really does is allows you the flexibility that any two guys can go do the job. You don't have to have the right person working that night or whatnot. Any two people here that you can get a hold of can go do the job.
That is a big advantage.
From a staffing perspective, it's nice too, because it gives you a lot of flexibility. Again, not having to have a certain person there, everyone can do the same thing. So that's
it does. And what's interesting, what's happened over the last few years as as the work we do evolves. Jack, you remember when you used to run out there and see who could get in the aircraft first to go fly, right? Because you wanted to fly the aircraft, right? Well, it's quite the opposite now. They fight over who gets to sit in the other seat and do the work and catch the bad guys and have, see the outcome, and that's really the coveted seat to be sitting in now, not flying the aircraft.
That's good to hear. That is really good to hear because I'm a big believer in this. I know John is too. Is that the tactical flight officer position is so key. Yeah, and it's if they're enthused about getting in that seat, that's a big plus. And I know other units over the years. San Diego comes to mind, where they did pilot and TFO, and they were good at both jobs. And if you asked them, "Hey, what do you want to do tonight?" they would say, "Hey, I want a TFO." Because they knew that they were going to be the one that was going to be involved in the capture of bad guys and the pursuits and the foot pursuits and the perimeters, and they loved it. So that's good that lead to hear that although they are pilots, they're enthused about that left seat because it is so important.
Absolutely. And a lot of places the pilot flies and that's his job, and the TFO does his thing and that's his job, and there's kind of a line between those two seats. And not here. They share duties a lot, so it's not uncommon to hear the voice on the radio change depending on the pilot can see the bigger picture with NVGs at night and can see everybody from the whole county responding, where your TFO now is in his monitor doing his work. And you'll often hear that radio traffic go back and forth, and people on the ground, they just hear that portion. They don't hear what's going on in the cockpit. And there's times when your TFO is so busy doing his job that if something's going into another municipality or they need to contact another agency, the pilot will roll over there and handle that comm and get that set up. So it's really interesting for somebody that just hears it from the road patrol side, and then play the video for them so they can hear all of the cockpit coordination and communication and all of that go on there. And like, wow, that's a lot going on there. And Jack, you're absolutely right. If done right, that position, that TFO position, is one of the hardest jobs in the agency.
It certainly is. And that's said that forever. If done correctly, if done right, it is the hardest job. And it's not for everyone. But it's even more challenging today, I think, with all the mission equipment. And but I love hearing, Lee, that about the enthusiasm and what you're talking about with the CRM. It's going to be seamless because yes. Maybe yesterday you were in the other seat. You know what that person wants to hear or needs to hear, and you're going to communicate it. Whereas if you're a full-time TFO, you've got to learn that, and it takes a long time for a tactical flight officer to figure out what do I say and when do I say it. Whereas if you're a pilot and a TFO and you're going back and forth, you know that. You know when to intrude and say, "Hey, partner, you got that tower? Hey, partner, you got that wire?" And you're not going to hesitate. Whereas a TFO that says, "Well, I'm not a pilot. I'm sure he has that." Now we're getting into some sketchy areas that can cause safety issues.
Yeah, assumptions are always bad. You bring up, being a TFO is a perishable skill. So you move from that TFO seat over to the pilot seat. If you don't sit back in that TFO seat every once in a while, you forget the importance of putting your partner in the position to do what they need to do.
Well, and the beauty of somebody doing both is, a lot of the communication now in the cockpit is unspoken. You've got a pilot that glances over there at the monitor and sees what the TFO is looking at and knows, well, let me change my orbit because he's fixing to get a tree in the way. You don't even have to say it or be told or think about it anymore. It just happens. You're absolutely true that that TFO position is absolutely a perishable skill that has gotten even more so as the technology has grown. I'm a testament to that because most of my job now is pushing paper across the desk. I don't get to go and have fun as much anymore. And any one of my guys can run rings around me every day.
With that said, Lee, do you still go out and fly and TFO at all?
It's pretty rare at this point because I'm staffed well enough right now where, at the moment I've got 3 guys on every shift. So the chance even to fill in right now is a little bit lean. Now that's going to change here shortly. As we move toward this 24-hour model, there'll be more chances to go do that.
Good, but you still do it occasionally and still enjoy it, I'm sure. And you are the boss, Lee. You can just kick them out. You can just say, "I've got this flight."
I could, but as a leader and knowing what enjoyment they get out of that, I find it hard to do when I've got guys sitting here that
Good for you.
that are good at it, that are better at the job than me,
Yeah.
and can go do that. So
good, man.
You brought up something that I thought's funny. You talk about the pilot and the TFO working together to catch a bad guy, and you talked about the pilot seeing the bigger picture, and that's always the case. Remember, as a TFO, you're focused on the narrow field of view that is presented in the camera screen, and a pilot would be looking out and be like, 9 times out of 10, it seems the pilot's like right there, right there. And I remember when I was flying, I ended up trying to fly dual pilot operations from time to time, and if I was in the TFO seat and my friend who's the pilot saw the suspect out of my field of view, I'd get so pissed that he found him and not me. It was a fun competition. But it is funny if you go through that ICS conversation and that recording to hear the communications going back and forth, and the fun part of that, the sporty part where you're bad mouthing your partner for catching the guy before you did or whatever the thing is, but yeah, good times.
Yeah.
I remember vividly as a TFO thinking that some of these pilots, oh my gosh, they're amazing. How do they see that? How did they see that bad guy? And I thought they were just incredible. And then I became a pilot and went, duh. It's so easy. I mean, because of what you just described, John, your field of view is so much wider as a pilot, and you're gonna see things. You have to close your eyes not to see some of this stuff, and we don't like that.
Some of that, as the equipment has evolved, has changed a little bit. So my guys are doing patrol at 4,000 or 5,000 feet now. So the pilot can't see the guy under the bush,
right?
Type thing. Like, in California, I know with the airspace and whatnot, a lot of times y'all worked a lot lower than that. So that big being able to see that wide field of view may let you see that guy where the TFO and his camera may be down in so narrow that he couldn't see it.
Talk about that a little bit more, Lee. Is that typical to go to 4,000 to 5,000 and then do like these wide orbits over Tallahassee? Is that kind of the routine? Talk about that, what you mean and how that works.
Patrol now, I would say 4,000 feet would be a normal place to hang out. Years ago, even before we had this generation of cameras, and I told the guys, let's try to operate a little higher. It used to hang out around 800 feet at night, and I'm like, let's just bump that up a little bit and see how y'all like that. And they kind of push back on that a little bit, but after they'd done it and could see even just going to 1,200 feet or so, how much more they could see, then they didn't want to get down lower. So yeah, from 4,000 feet, you can see the whole city, and if a hot call goes out and you slew the camera around there, you can be on scene immediately. First one on scene, and you hadn't even started heading that way. So we're having huge response from that. We've got a better field of view, gives you more options. If you, heaven forbid, have an engine failure, this came from Randy Rolls, you can change the zip code that you're going to land in if you're in a bad area or whatnot. It gives you all kind of times.
You could land, you could be anywhere in the county at 5,000 feet and maybe make the airport. I mean, if you do your job right, that's enhances safety dramatically.
Certainly give you a whole lot more options to pick a better place. Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
Instead of going, well, my only spot is that intersection, or my only spot is that football field. Having gives you lots of options.
That's what I love about technology. It's providing solutions and making us more effective and safer in our operations as a whole. And the camera systems are a big part of that. I love how the camera systems have evolved, not just the infrared, but even the daytime cameras too. The quality of imagery, the distance of imagery is absolutely amazing. Shotover's new M2 got a chance to demo that, and I was blown away by the offset distance that it was effective at. Just absolutely amazing. So like you said, it's allowing us to do things in a different way that's kind of never been done before. In line with that conversation, can you talk about the mission equipment you guys are using and how you guys are employing that?
Bell is proud to sponsor Vertical Helicasts and their vision to hold meaningful mission, safety, and best practice conversations in the helicopter industry. The lessons learned from these conversations will undoubtedly shape the future of both new and veteran helicopter operators.
Currently, we're using the MX-10 cameras, Traca searchlights. We've got a couple of generations of those, different models of those. The Aerocomputer is our current equipment. We've got on there the latest one of those. Technosonic radios blown out with every option that you could imagine built out in them. We've been flying NVGs for, I don't know, at least 20 years now. We were early on board with that, which we consider a life safety device
absolutely.
now. We were doing things years ago. We shouldn't have been doing it all without those. As far as downlink goes, currently a combination of Troll and Vislink equipment, and that's a huge asset for us. It's on every flight. The real-time crime center people see it. The people on the road can see it in their cars. They can see it on desktops. That's a huge asset.
Does that
for us.
downlink go on right away when you guys launch, or does it only go on when it's requested?
It's on all the time. Yeah. Unless there's something going on that everybody doesn't need to see, and then we've got other ways to deal with that. But yeah, that is real time all the time, and is a huge asset. Huge asset.
Yeah, you talk about the information it provides for the decision makers on the ground during a critical incident, and you can't replace the amount of intelligence, actionable intelligence that you're getting from that downlink feed and that imagery. Our TFOs are really good about describing and painting a picture, but there's a definite difference between actually seeing it and hearing the verbal description of what's happening. You think of an entry team.
And I mentioned our real-time crime center being able to see that. That's the guys sitting in the blacked out rooms with monitors and computers doing data mining and that type of stuff. And that's a huge, huge portion of our industry now, because that's half a crime fight now, is doing data mining and whatnot. And those guys look at the same thing that we're seeing on a screen, but they see something completely different based on their vantage point. So it's really amazing to be sitting here listening to the radio. You hear real time and the flight crew exchanging information, but they're not asking questions of each other because they're looking at the same thing and just responding. Huge tool there. You get real time and us and a dog involved, and that's a powerful tool.
One of the things that's neat is seeing how the evolution of chasing vehicles has changed. There was a recent almost quasi pursuit that I was listening to, and the agency that was pursuing the vehicle lost. It was a motorcycle. Lost the motorcycle, and the first thing the officer did when they lost the motorcycle was ask for the real-time crime center to review their cameras to see if they could spot where that motorcycle was. And while it didn't work for that particular situation, that's a really cool tool and neat way of using technology to make our job more efficient and safer. So I love what they're doing with that. Can you talk about your real-time crime center a little bit as far as what tools you guys are utilizing for that and how it's helping your aviation program?
We've got the same stuff all the other agencies have as far as license plate readers and that type of stuff, and they can go back and do analytics. And these are the crime analysts, so they know what's going on and probably know some of the players that's on your screen when they're looking at your video. But it's huge. But they feed information to our guys. You get a stolen vehicle hit, and the guys can look at that intersection and which direction to travel and what's the time lapse, and there it is. There's the vehicle. And those are things that you wouldn't be able to pursue on when they run the traffic stop. But you've got an aircraft overhead, and you've got a whole two agencies of people that understand how to work with those guys. And your catch rate goes through the roof and makes it much safer, not only for the officers and deputies on the ground, but for the public also. That's, so we're catching the bad guys. We're getting the stolen car that's probably got the dope in it, that's probably got the guns in it, that's probably got a guy with a warrant in it, and we would get none of that if it wasn't for that air crew being well-trained overhead with good equipment.
It reminds me of a conversation we had with Matt Sluka from the Illinois State Police. They're utilizing a lot of that same technology and employing it proactively like you guys are doing. And it makes the air crews so much more effective when it comes to fighting crime. You're no longer reactively responding to things. You're proactively, when time permits, finding these criminals and recovering guns and all kinds of dangerous contraband off the streets. I love that.
And the proactive portion, my guys generate cases from the air. A recent one just a few weeks ago, we were having a rash of mini storage warehouse burglaries. And one of my guys, once a week, we get all these emails with all of this crime data and where they analyzed and this type thing, where we think it may happen again and who the players may be. And I've got one guy that takes that and boils that down to a one sheet. Here's what we might need to know. But the night crew that night, middle of the night, 2, 3 in the morning. They were going around just checking every mini warehouse that they could think of. And the last one they went to check, the guy had done 10 burglaries and was actively doing one, and they were able to set up a perimeter and go there and get him. And then you take that and you tie it to what other ones were there, and that's not unusual for them to see something and generate a case.
So Lee, how do you and your department handle that? You just gave a great example of an air crew initiating something, being proactive, and coming up with a really good bad guy that's hitting maybe dozens, probably dozens, and you catch them in the act because of proactivity like that. How do you handle that as a unit in informing Sheriff McNeil and about these good things? And how does your department handle getting that out to the public so that the public knows, hey, that helicopter that you're paying for, look at this. Look what they did last night. Is that something, and I think I know the answer to this, but is that something your department gets out to the public, and how do you do it?
When it happens here, there's a watch summary that goes out, so anybody gets to see that the next morning, and that's probably in there. Once a month, we send our stats out to all of our command staff and to the city command staff, and along with that comes a 2-page summary of here was some of the highlights of the month. And even me, I'm surprised sometimes when I read it, when you actually write down what these guys did, and they have to cull through and pick out the best one, so it's only 2 pages long. It's pretty impressive and has an impact of that. When we can, media pushes out to the public something that we've done. Now, a lot of times what we do has a lot to do with ongoing investigations and whatnot, and open cases, and they can't do that. We're trying to make that easier for them to do. But we do know that when they push out something that has a video from an aircraft in it, the number of hits on the social media sites just goes through the roof, and the comments are good, and people can see the good that we're doing. I've got a meeting next week with command staff from both agencies and city and county leaders to tout some of that. A couple of good cases that we've had recently to show them the good work that the guys are doing that nobody ever gets to see or hear
exactly about. We talk about this all the time on the podcast with guests and between ourselves too, about how there's so much good work being done, and most of it doesn't get out. It just doesn't get out. Sometimes it doesn't even get up the chain of command, much less get out to the public. And that needs to change. And you guys are doing it right. You don't have to, the public doesn't need to hear about every single, pursuit or but an incident like that is a great example of proactivity with a very expensive piece of equipment, but that would not have happened from a patrol or from a ground unit. It just is very unlikely. And they were able to check those things very easily, very efficiently, and bam, they hit it, and they hit the jackpot. And who knows how many places that guy has hit, not just in Leon County, but in your surrounding counties. So it's good that you're being proactive on your end too, and getting that to the sheriff, to the commanders, and then out to the public when it's something really good. More units need to do that. And believe it, it seems like common sense, but we've been around enough to know that not everybody does that, and they need to. They need to.
And that's huge in selling your unit. I mean, we've got to sell ourselves to our customers, and all of these people are our customers. And I get asked sometimes about budgets and how do you get the money that you need, and how can we do that? I've got agencies that come here and model what we're doing and ask me these questions. And you mentioned Dothan, Alabama. I went up there and spoke to all the leaders up there not long ago, and their program is being infused now from that. But what I say is, if you produce a product, a budget and the support will come. If they're getting that product, if you're catching bad guys and finding good guys that need to be found, and people know about it, they'll support it. If you're not doing that, you're going to get cut. You're not going to have a budget. But the other side of that is put it out there, let them know what you're doing. When you have a really good one, make sure they know about it, and they'll support it. And that's the success that we've had.
I like that line, by the way, Lee, a lot. I watched a a video recently of you with Sheriff McNeil talking about the aviation unit, and you used that line about we catch the bad guys and we find the good guys. And that is so concise and clear and accurate, and people need to understand that, yeah, you're up there fighting crime, but we're also finding Alzheimer's patients, and you're also finding kids that are missing. And, it's just such a good line to throw out there at the public where they can truly understand what your agency and what your unit's all about. I love it. That's a good one.
And that's when you really boil it down, that's the two things we do, right? We find bad guys that don't want to be found. We find good guys that need to be found. There you go. That's the job.
That's as simple as it gets. And sometimes simple is really good, isn't it? And the average citizen can listen to that one line that you just said and just go, oh, yeah, that's really good. That's what we want them for. That's what we're paying them for. Good. Keep it up. And that's what you want.
And sometimes we have to explain that because they don't understand that. I had a complaint that the sheriff received a couple of weeks ago, and I had to reply to it. And before I was done, which is normally the case when we have a complaint, when you explain what they were doing and what they were working on, when you're done, they thank you for being there and and are on your side.
One thing you brought up that I'd like to touch on is the documentation that goes into these cases. We talk about making ourselves an essential part of police operations, and I think that's important because when you're not essential, then you're at risk for being cut. And what you're describing is you've become an essential part of the operations of your county. The real-time crime center couldn't operate. The field operations couldn't do what they do outside of what you all provide. The documentation is a crucial part of that. My agency, we did what you do. I was in charge for a while of writing. We had a weekly activity report, and I would do exactly what you just described. You'd be in charge of going through all the incidents and documenting and writing out articulately the incidents that were noteworthy. And then you'd take that would go each week to the command. And then after that, you do a monthly one. Then you'd take all those documents from the weeks and combine them into one. And it's really hard to look at those and find the ones that should go to the monthly because there's so many. But what you're doing is each time you do that, you're showing the value and worth of your program. And a lot of agencies like you guys talked about don't do that. They're relying upon the watch commanders to write up their summary of their shift. Well, I'd look at the logs that are being written by the watch commanders a lot of times, and they describe an incident where someone was taken into custody. We know that person would have been taken into custody if it weren't for air support being there. But based on all of our experiences, we know that the suspect would have gotten away. But in the watch commander's log, it makes a nominal mention of air support. Just maybe air support was on scene, but doesn't talk about how the suspect would have gotten away. So it's really important that we're internally documenting those things. You talk about personnel selection, selecting TFOs who are not only good at their job, but they're detail oriented and they're invested in the program to where they're going to spend time to write accurate logs and descriptions of what happens, because it's really, really important, as we see with LAPD, to have the documentation on hand to fight or refute a claim that someone else is making that's untrue. Be like, no, that's not true, and this is why. So just wanted to touch briefly on that.
Yeah, we are statistic driven. That's the world that we live in, and if you're not doing that, the success won't follow. You can say you're doing all kind of good stuff, but it doesn't show up in a statistic somewhere, and it doesn't count.
Do you have the information on hand? Can you talk about what you guys use to track that data, or how you store that data to be used later? Are there any software programs you guys use to track that?
It's not something fancy that we pay a bunch of money for. Smartsheets is what we track all of this in, and I'm sure there are better options, but all of that is tracked in there because it allows our analysts that look at this kind of stuff and command staff, they can log into that real time and see these numbers. They can see what we did yesterday. How many of which type of calls and how much time we spent in the air if they want to see that type of stuff. So we use that because it was something we already had, and it's a little seamless when they're putting together their quarterly reports or annual summaries or whatnot. We've got that data already there, and we don't have to go back and recreate anything.
It's important to have a program like that in place where you can generate reports, customize reports. So if command comes back and says, can you show us the last 2 months what you guys have done? You can pretty quickly pull that data. We had a paid system for a while, and then we realized we were paying too much. So our city IT department came up with a spreadsheet program. It was pretty good, and it allowed us to do that. Jack, can you talk about what you guys did at LAPD when you were there as far as tracking that data? This is the end of part 1 of our conversation with Captain Lee Majors. Stand by for a message after a word from our sponsors.
Thank you to our sponsor, Becker Avionics. Becker Avionics, new 3D spatial audio will mitigate possible confusion in the cockpit by repeating the last 90 seconds of incoming messages broadcast over any 2 channels. Check out the new AMU 6500 at www.beckerusa.com. Thank you to our sponsor, Shotover. Shotover Systems is the leading developer and manufacturer of high-performance gyro-stabilized cameras with advanced real-time AR mapping and mission management, all backed by unparalleled custom training and support. Now offering the M2 multi-sensor system, sole 6-axis EO/IR platform with 4K Ultra HD color and infrared technology. Ideal for law enforcement and defense. Offered with real-time AR overlays to quickly identify streets, weather, and traffic. Automated license plate recognition, 24 megapixel digital photographs, and automated steering and tracking.
Bell is proud to sponsor Vertical Helicasts and their vision to hold meaningful mission, safety, and best practice conversations in the helicopter industry. The lessons learned from these conversations will undoubtedly shape the future of both new and veteran helicopter operators.
Thank you for supporting the sponsors who make these conversations possible. We're only a few weeks away from releasing the highly anticipated 2-part series with the author of the book Razor 03, Alan Mack. CW5 Alan Mack is a master aviator with more than 6,700 hours of flight time, most of which was spent flying the CH-47 as part of the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, known as the Night Stalkers. You still have some time to read the book he wrote before the release of the episodes. Some of the reviews of his book are worth mentioning here. General David Petraeus, former commander of the Surge in Iraq, U.S. Central Command, and coalition forces in Afghanistan, and former director of the CIA, wrote, Razor 03 is a truly extraordinary book by a phenomenal pilot and warrior. Alan Mack was in the thick of every sensitive, harrowing, high-stakes operation in the decade following 9/11. His account of combat from the cockpit of the most exceptional Special Ops Aviation Unit, and of the toll it took on him and his family, is forthright, riveting, raw, compelling, and inspirational. Readers will not be able to put down Razor 03. Another review comes from Doug Stanton, the New York Times best-selling author of Horse Soldiers, and In Harm's Way wrote, maybe the unspoken hardest part of fighting a war is coming home. Al Mack fearlessly explores the terror and camaraderie of flying in the world's most elite aviation unit and the damage and cost that is inflicted upon his marriage and himself. His journey on the home front is harrowing, as at the same time he puts us in the cockpit for a truly dramatic behind-the-scenes look at some of the U.S.'s most secretive operations. Al Mack survived the wars, and then he survived what the wars did to him. And I believe he set his tail down so that others might find a way back home. Another impactful review from Command Master Chief Navy SEAL Britt K. Slabinski, who is a retired U.S. Navy SEAL and Medal of Honor recipient, said, Razor 03, A Night Stalker's War, is an eye-opening description of what goes on behind the scenes of a special operation from the pilot's perspective. Al Mack's edge-of-the-seat stories provide a compelling rendition of what it's like to ride to hell and back in an MH-47 Chinook. An incredible story, hardly believable, had I not witnessed it firsthand. I definitely agree with the mentioned reviews. Alan Mack's book is a must-read, and so is the 2-part series we recorded with him.
Time to close up the hangar. Thanks for joining us on the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts.